just started the recording. So where we had left off was we're in the temple, and you guys had worked your way through the Sun Temple and found a bunch of different things, and then I kind of poorly introduced a hey, this is an option that only one person can see, and should have done it the other way, but lessons for next time. But your character was the only one able to perceive that the hallway, which when you turn left goes to the old high priest quarters that had the door that was sealed, and to the right went further into the temple where you went and saw a bunch of other things. But straight there was an alcove, and that is this that you see here. So there is an alcove that looks like the inside of a geode. It's about 20 feet wide and about 15 feet tall at the top, and then it kind of gradually gets lower as it goes back, and it's only about 4 feet tall at the very back. But it's these rings of different color crystals, and hanging from the ceiling are these very fine white kind of crystalline looking hairs. And you can't see kind of where it goes, that as it goes further on back into what looks to be the cave, but in the entryway you can see there is a little area of water, and then a raised pedestal with something that is glowing bright white in the center of the pedestal. So that's where we're going to be starting off for today. Is there anything that you feel like you want clarification on, reminders of, want to kind of refresh before we kind of jump into this scene, as far as like setting Griffel's mindset and things like that?
No. So I know that we have in our company a little friend, a little dude, a dead dude, who was like he seemed like he was like an accountant for the temple. And he, as far as I'm aware, he wasn't able to see this either, and he doesn't have what we would call like faith. So he like I'm remembering that he like believes in the gods, or like believes that they are real, but doesn't necessarily like have faith in their like he's not religious in that way.
Yeah, for him it was more of a business than a religion.
Yeah.
He
But
was
he still was doing it for like values reasons, right? Like he agreed with the principles and
mhm.
like was satisfied by the like. It seemed like he knew that they were doing good work.
Yeah. So it was good work for good reasons. And he had gotten, so the guy's name is Shenwei, and Shenwei had been sort of like taken in with all of the other people who were like the super devout, the high priest and his other high ranking members of the church. And then they had the ritual that changed them done to them. And for him, he was like, they sort of built the foundation of this connection with the body and the ghoul and the spirit and all that sort of stuff off of faith, or at least that's his explanation of it. And he said that his ghoul, like his connection, died very quickly because he was sort of taken with the rest of them, but he was the accountant, and then all of the high priests were taken, and so like his connection to faith was, he was an important person in the church, but he wasn't important because of his faith in the church.
Mm-hmm.
And so he felt like he kind of got like roped in with a group that he didn't necessarily
Yeah,
belong to.
which is why he was different when we first met him in the church. He seemed to be not completely insane. Okay, and just visually, this wider circle of stones before we get to the pedestal, is the stuff in between that, is that like a hole in the ground, or is that water?
Water. So in front of you, there's basically the basin of like a fountain, and then there's water in the basin, and in the middle of the basin there's a pedestal that sticks up, and then on the top of the circular pedestal there's a something giving a very bright light.
Excellent. I would like to touch the light.
So as you come in, and we kind of did this at the end of session last time, but there is this sort of break where when you cross some sort of threshold, you can tell that the rest of the group has to stay behind, and you guys, because the curiosity of the group probably takes some time here to test the bounds of it, and the short version is basically only you can get through. And so you go up, and do you just, hey, here's a bright light, touch the bright light?
Yeah.
Okay. So you go up to the center. As your hand gets close to the center of it, you can feel the heat coming from that. That bright light in the middle is like some sort of very, very hot white, like flame. And as you kind of go and approach it, you would have to reach from the edge of the pool to go into it, or you'd have to step into the pool. Which would Griffle do? Would Griffle kind of awkwardly put herself like over the pool to touch it, or would she step into the pool?
I don't think I would step into the pool. No. I think there's a respect there for like there's a superstition there for not disturbing still bodies of water.
Mm-hmm. So you reach over. It is very hot, and when you would you still attempt to touch it? Like when you got close and it started to be very hot, would you keep touch? Would you
Uh,
continue going?
I would keep going until I got to the point where I was like, oh, okay, this feels like it's burning me, and then I would pull away.
So it does get to that point, and then when you pull away, you can see that in the interior of the pedestal, so the pedestal has a little raised lip around the edge that's a couple inches wide and about a quarter of inch deep. So the very center of the pedestal is very slightly depressed from the rest of it. Sort of think like a very shallow bird bath almost. And when you pull your hand back from it, you can see little wisps of energy from your hand and from your arm go from your hand and arm into the surface of the table, and you see glyphs and sigils and runes and things light up on the top of the table, like absorbing some of the runoff of the energy from your hand when you put it over the table.
Oh. Are they in any language I would recognize?
Um, let's see.
I speak common, goblin, modern goblin, and modern draconic
So
and common.
you would not. You would be able to recognize the symbols for what they are. Um, you would not be able to read any of the symbols, and moreover, once the thing kind of lights up, because before you guys came in here, when uh, Filibuster used his magic, you saw the room sort of siphon away a big chunk of his divine energy as he was gathering it. That looks somewhat the same that happened here. Like it siphoned a little bit of divine energy away. And while you don't know what the sigils say, you can recognize them as being in deep speech. So you can recognize the language as deep speech.
Okay.
And the other thing that you can recognize is, although you don't know exactly what it says on the tabletop, it's pretty clearly some sort of map.
Oh. So is it a map with like labels in deep speech?
It's a map with labels in deep speech, but without putting your hand over it and without that sort of expenditure of energy, the table doesn't light up at all, and none of the runes, none of the sigils are visible. So it's a
So when
blank
I move my
tabletop.
hand away, it goes away again.
Correct.
Okay. Can I how would I go about feeding it divine energy?
So it would take you sort of a moment to try to do it, but you're adept enough at divine power that it doesn't take like a check. It just takes an effort of will and a moment of concentration.
Mhm. Yeah, I want to feed it enough divine. So, I mean, this is kind of more of an abstract question about like the nature of power sources.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like, is it something that I feel I have a limited store of? Like, is it something kind of tied to my abilities in some way, or is it something that's like I have an endless well of this energy, and I can continue feeding it into the pedestal.
So, generally speaking, divine power, the way that it feels to use, is like you have a limitless supply, but a limited ability to exert yourself to use that supply.
Right. So
Um,
I have an endless well of water, but I still need to pull the buckets up.
correct.
Cool. So I want to give it as much energy as I can. I want to give it kind of like, I would say that I would go until I'm like the mental equivalent of heavy panting.
Gotcha. So when you start to put energy into it, you'll very quickly see the sigils light back up, and then they start to reorganize themselves. You can see the sigils and marks on the table start to move, and they break up into two halves of something. Where you can see that there's pretty clearly on the tabletop, sort of almost like a yin and yang. There's two sections that, although you don't know the language, the differences between them are pretty drastic. One of the sections, the section that's sort of closer to you currently, is extremely dense. It's so dense that if you were more than like maybe 5 or 6 feet away from the table, if you looked at it, it would look almost like a solid uh, block. Maybe it
Hmm.
might look textured, kind of like a textured ceiling or something. But when you get close, you can see that it's just a bunch of symbols that are very finely woven. They're very close together. The one that's slightly further away from you, it has similar looking symbols. They're all in deep speech, but it's much more spread out. There's a sense of like space and gaps in the other half of the table when it lights up. And you kind of continue to put energy into it, and you can see that at first everything is flowing and moving around, and then it kind of settles. Like the it seems like it gets to an equilibrium. The light on the table dies down from being fairly bright, and it's more like it sort of settles into a it like sets in place, I guess you could say.
Hmm. Okay, so if I were to stop feeding it, it would stay where it is.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I guess I stopped. Is the white light in the middle still there?
Yes.
Hmm.
It's still bright, and it's still kind of hard to like look through the light to see the stuff that's on the other side of the table. But now that you fed it a little bit of energy, there is this kind of weird disconnect where, when you look at a light that is this is like a torch, like a welding torch bright. And looking at it should cause your eyes some sort of discomfort, but it doesn't. And it doesn't have that like after image of looking at something very bright on your eyes.
Yeah, I want to try my experiment again where I like bring my hand close enough that I just not being burnt and then pull it back again and see what happens.
So this time when you pull your hand close, you can see that the light flickers, and where you get to the point where you're okay, I'm now expecting there to be heat, there is some warmth, but not heat. And you can kind of go all the way to touching the thing in the middle, which feels like either a piece of glass or maybe a piece of crystal that's in the middle. It's very difficult to figure out exactly what it is because it is generating such a bright light. But this time, when you go to touch it, it basically lets you touch it, and it is warm to the touch, but it's definitely not uncomfortable.
Hmm. Is it attached to the basin?
It is. It is attached to the center of the basin.
Okay. And like with the symbols that have formed, do they like can I feel those on the like feel the letters on the basin? Like if I run my hands over them, can I feel any kind of like impression or embossing or anything like that? Or
The tabletop
like
feels completely smooth.
okay.
What I will say is, as you're kind of running your hands over and you're kind of reaching to different parts of the table, what you notice is that effect where it looks like the table sort of cut in half with two sections. As you move your
Hmm.
hand around and you sort of reposition a little bit to reach at different things, the symbols on the table and the way it looks follows you, so that the parts of the symbols that
Oh.
are always very dense are always facing towards you, and the parts that are not very dense, and again it kind of gives you the impression of both things kind of give you the impression of a map, are further away. And the sparse section of the table is always staying away from you.
Okay, so the thing that's close to me does not look like the map. It's the thing that's like the sparse section looks like a map. Is that right?
Yeah, the sparse section looks like a map. The dense section looks like, I mean, if it was a map, it's just too cluttered to be able to make anything out.
Okay. Um. So it's gonna seem a little weird. I want to take out my bone rod, and I want to touch my bone rod to the tabletop.
So when you do that, when you take the bone rod out and you touch it to the tabletop, you see a lot of the. It's kind of like I don't know if you've ever seen what it looks like if you draw ink with a fountain pen, where it like
Mm-hmm.
sucks it up away from the tabletop. That's what it looks like to all the glowing sigils that are in the super dense part on your side of the table. And when it touches against the table, all those things sort of flow up and into the rod, leaving the table as a tabletop that kind of looks again like a map, but it is all sparse now instead of being half sparse and half dense.
And does each side look different?
It
Like, has the nature of the sparseness changed? If that makes sense.
I understand what you're asking. I need to make a check for you real quick. So, um, at first, it would have been very difficult to do because it's not written in a language that you're familiar with, and it's not from a perspective. Like it's not presented in a way, I guess is the best way. It's not presented in a way that is very familiar to you. However, without all the clutter on one side of it, you can recognize this map. The labels that are on the map don't look like labels that you're familiar with, but the land masses, the way that the curve of the waterways and things, there is there is an unmistakable image that shows in the map, and you can see a map of the inner sea, and it takes up pretty much the entire tabletop. Is at the very top right, you've got like where the bottom parts of like Endeavor are for the Reach. In the top center, you can see where Haven is and Faith. And the top left, you see Flace. Like you can see Grace in the center of the island. Like you see where the labels are, but you can't read any of them. But you don't have to be able to read the labels to recognize a sort of a weird
You don't
perspective
have
map.
to. You don't have to be able to like know the names of all the countries to recognize Europe.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Can I how long would it take me if I were to like write down the names of the places that I was seeing? Like not a one-to-one copy of the map, but just like I'm fairly confident that I could like do a rough shape of the Circle C and then put dots in and then copy the would it be Rolonic for deep speech?
I don't remember
Or
deep speech, to be honest. I think Rolonic is correct. Let me pull up my language stuff. Language. It is Rolonic, yes.
do I share a language group
I do not believe so,
with?
because Goblin uses the Common script, and so does Common.
Yep.
And Draconic uses its own script. You use the Iokeric script. But
Right.
Rolonic is
Deep
also
speech
Elven,
Elven. Ah, yeah.
so it's not. It would not be all that difficult. Like you're not. It's not going to be good handwriting, but this is something you've seen enough that you would not be able to like. You wouldn't struggle with recreating Rolonic letters.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think I would like to. I think it might help us later on. I think if I were to be able to give it to one of many, I think she would be able to read. Does she read deep speech? I don't remember.
Yes, she does.
Yeah, I thought she did. Yeah. So I think I will take the time to jot down the locations and the names associated with them.
Okay. And technically, they are sort of, like 10 feet away. So if you wanted to, you could you could set aside and be like, hey, I'm still here. And, here's a piece of paper. Is this what I think it is? And she could translate the deep speech for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't realize. Of course, I could just like step back through. I think like what I would do is I would write them all down and then I would give it to them and I'm gonna be like, I found this thing. It might be important. Just hang on to it and then continue back on. So like we can discuss that at the start of next session or something like that.
Mm-hmm. For the purposes of, um, I think what is important, because I don't want to take this away from one of many being able to interact with it, but I think the thing that she'd be able to tell you is you're missing a couple of things that you're expecting on the map, and one of the things that you're missing is Flace. Flace is, especially for the goblins, is like a keystone settlement. It's your major refueling point. It has the biggest open harbor in the inner sea. It's where the smokestacks get built. It is the largest industrial city, generally in the world. It's not the highest population, but it's like the largest industry city in the world, and it's not on the map.
Okay.
And the reason I bring that up is because that would be like, oh, this is a map of the inner sea. If you start to look it up, that would be, as a navigator, that would be your like, okay, let's start here and then figure out where everything is in relation to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Is there anything else in its place? There's just nothing there.
There isn't a label there.
Okay. So I guess this was a map from before Flace was founded.
Potentially.
Is what I would take from that. Yeah. Which makes sense. I mean, it does make sense in the context of like this is a long forgotten temple. I don't imagine Flace has been around forever, so. Okay, no, that's really cool. So then I want to look at so the table's blank now. Oh no, the table still has the map on it, right?
Correct. It still has the sparse map, which is the map of the inner
Okay.
sea.
And where would does the inner sea cover the entire table?
Yes.
Okay. And where, relatively speaking, in the world is the crystal at the center?
The crystal is very close to the capital city of Grace.
Ah, okay.
Which is the
I would like
Dragonborn
to
capital
just
city.
before I hand it to one, I would like to make a special note of like this is where the crystal was on the table, and like I would try to be like reasonably accurate with the scale of the map, if not necessarily like I wouldn't be accurate with like the coastline like squiggles and stuff like that, but I would try to keep the scale pretty accurate.
And this is an area that you are familiar enough with that you would be able to draw a map of the inner sea from memory. So
Yeah.
that would not be.
It wouldn't be perfect, but it would be like the rough shapes of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be passable.
Okay, awesome. What has my bone rod changed at all?
No.
Okay. Can I like? I don't know. It doesn't feel any different to me. Like mentally, it doesn't feel different.
No. It's weird because there was no reaction that you could tell other than what you could see from the table. The rod didn't get any brighter. I mean, it looked like it sucked up a whole bunch of light and then did not generate any light. It didn't get any warmer or colder. It still feels kind of alien and difficult to discern, right? It's difficult to feel whether it's a smooth surface or a rough surface, and kind of whenever you think
Okay.
about it, it feels like the opposite of what you're thinking about.
Yeah. So like like an optical illusion, but
Yeah,
with
for touch.
everything about it. Yeah. Okay. So when I look at the table, um, do I get the sense that the map was always there, but there was clutter over the top of it?
You get the sense that this map was drawn when you touched the table. Like as you fed it
Yeah.
energy, it drew like two pieces of a map, or it drew one piece of two different maps, and then touching the rod to the table took away one of the pieces of like one of the two maps, and now you're left with a complete single map on a table.
Okay. and I didn't recognize anything from the other piece.
Yeah, it was too cluttered. Everything was
Yeah.
like imagine you zoomed all the way in on like Google Maps, and then you
Mhm.
started to zoom out, and you zoomed out to like see all of southern Australia, but all of the labels were on as if you were looking at a street view. It's
Ah, I see. Yeah.
unintelligible.
Yeah. Okay. That's crazy. And I have no idea whether that was like the other half of the existing map as it's currently now, or if it was a completely different map.
If it was definitely marking different things, and this one seems to be marking places as far as you can tell.
Mhm.
And the big thing with the inner sea is that there's big chunks where there's just water. Like there's not a bunch of settlements in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah. Okay. Um. Well, I there is a passageway moving forward. Is that right?
There is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything else that I can think of to do with this pedestal at the moment. So I think I would back off of that. Um. Hand the drawn map to one of many, and then continue on down the tunnel.
Okay. So as you walk towards the back, the room does a weird sort of like an optical illusion. Like when you're walking towards the back of it, it feels like the back of the room stretches out. The ceiling gets really low, and you're pretty certain that you did not get close enough to the ceiling to hit your head, but you get this kind of very very grating, like like nails on chalkboard of the top of your helm hitting, like the top of the crystal helm hitting the crystals above you, where it almost feels like the crystal cave got shorter as you walked forward.
Okay. Can I if I turn around, how far away am I from the pedestal?
It looks like you're right next to it.
Ah, no. It's stopping me from going ahead. I think it's okay. Um, I would like to take I have a theory. I would like to take out an ink pen, and uh I would like to put a dot where Flace is and then write the label.
Okay. So you're basically taking ink to mark the tabletop where Flace is supposed to be.
Yeah.
So you take it out, you put a label on there. You're kind of drawing on what feels like a stone top,
Mhm.
like a polished marble top. So it doesn't really sink in that well, but as you're starting to lay, you can sort of draw on the top of it. And as you are kind of leaning over and doing that, you can see out of the corners of your eyes these swirling dark things, like ink is being added to the pool below you as you're leaning out over the pool to draw on the table.
Mhm. Interesting. So does it stay on the table or does it go down into the pool?
It does. It stays on the table, but the pool below you, it swirls with a lot more ink than you're putting on the table. Like maybe you put, you know, a tenth of an ounce of, you put 10
Yeah.
milliliters maybe of liquid on the table, and it looks like you dumped like a liter into the pool below you.
Oh, okay. Um, so I have a feeling about this that it like I obviously have to do something before I move on. And what Griffel is thinking about is like the old adage, you have to know where you come from in order to know where you're going. And so what I think is happening here is like the table's like kind of asking me the question of like, where do you come from? Like, and I do come from place. Um, and so I put it in there, but it's added more ink. I'm gonna try walk down the passageway again and see if it does the same thing.
So the same thing happens. It feels like the
Cool.
ceiling kind of reaches down and scrapes against the top of your head.
Okay. All right. So I wipe the ink away. I'm like, I get a rag out, and I'm like, ah, oh.
And as you wipe it
Um,
away, you can see something in the water below you is sort of like mirroring. Like as you clean off the table, the ink slowly fades away
mhm.
from the water below.
Okay. Can I dip my finger in the water?
So you go and you dip your finger into the water, and there's this weird kind of numb sensation that runs up your finger, up your arm, and then kind of goes around your jaw and around the side of your head. It passes pretty quickly, but it is kind of a little jolt of numbness that goes all the way up your arm to your head, and there is this strange sort of static. Something that you've had before when like the helm was reacting to something really strongly.
Oh. Can I ask it? Like, was that you?
So it sends back kind of a confused mix of things where at first it's like it's trying to say something to you and like it's kind of yelling down a hallway, and then after a second it gets to sending you a message that's pretty clearly, no, that wasn't me, but that affected me.
Okay. How did it affect you?
You get the sense of like something being unplugged, like something being pulled apart.
Oh, was it bad?
Not not a necessarily bad thing. Sort of the thing might send you an image of like throwing away your mooring lines from dock. So leaving port is
Oh.
not necessarily a bad thing, but it is a separation from port.
Oh, I see. Okay, so not like a taking apart of something vital, like a detachment of something.
Yeah, like a momentary like something about that thing tried to detach the helm from you.
Oh. Uh, I don't know if I like that, champ. Like, ever since I found out what the helm was, I am incredibly reluctant to take it off. I do not want this poor soul to ever have to be alone in its own head again.
Makes sense?
Uh, so, hmm. I guess I will give it more than a finger. I will like reach my hand, my whole hand. Like I'll reach up to my elbow, but no further. And
So
I
as you,
want to try to like feel around.
so as you reach down into the pool, the a couple of things happen uh, that kind of happen in stages. Like as your hand enters the water, you get that sensation of numbness that's much stronger, and you can feel the disconnect with the helmet. You can feel that once your hand is submerged in it, that you don't have that mental link with the helm. And as your hand continues to sink in further, the water feels slightly off. You don't think that a lot of the other people in your group would recognize the difference, but you can recognize the difference of what salt water feels like as contrasted to fresh water. And as your
Oh
arm
yeah,
goes into
100%.
it's pretty clearly salt water. It's reasonably cold, but it doesn't look like salt water. It doesn't have the smell of salt from the outside. It doesn't look or smell like anything. And as you see your arm in the pool, you make no ripples. There's no disturbance of the wave of the surface of the water, and it's perfectly mirror bright back at you. So it looks more like you're putting your arm through a mirror than it does like you're putting your arm into a pool of water.
Is this a portal? I feel like this might be a portal.
So you get sunk down to your elbow, and kind of as you get down to your elbow, you get this flood of color around your arm, of this kind of alternating blue, black, and purple waves kind of oscillating out, but it doesn't seem to be on the surface. It seems like it's underneath the surface, behind the mirror, is this wave of energy coming out from your arm.
Coming out from my arm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Okay, how wide is this pool?
All told, probably 10 feet, maybe a little less. There is the pedestal in the middle, so like there's only like maybe 3 or 4 feet between the edge and the pedestal in the middle, and then there's the pedestal, and then there's another 3 or 4 feet on the other side.
So not really like a comfortable enough space to like get in it.
It would be possible for you to do, but it would be awkward, especially because at first glance it looks like it's, like an inch deep, but you put your whole arm in it, so you know it's way deeper than it
Yeah.
looks. You could get into the pool completely, but it is, yeah, it would be awkward but doable, is the way to say that.
Can I cup my hands and like to try and cup water and then pull them up?
Yeah. So you cup your hands and you get some water, and you see the water, it slips through your hands, but as you kind of turn like to look at the water going through your hands, it's not going like between your fingers and between the cracks holding up your hands. It's going through your hand and out the other side.
Okay.
And there
Just
is,
for the sake of like science, I'm gonna try with a vessel as well. Like I'm gonna pull out like a camp cup and try it with that.
and it does the same thing.
Yeah,
And
figures.
everything that you, like your arm, now that you've taken out, it feels kind of fresh. It feels like you just got out of a really relaxing shower. Like the arm that you put in feels noticeably like rested and rejuvenated. And it's kind of awkward to have like one part of your body feel like that.
Okay.
I'm not saying you need to solve it, but it is one of those things. It's kind of the reverse of like, if like your arm falls or your hand falls asleep, how like it's super noticeable because it's just that one part of your body that feels different. That's the same thing, only your hand and arm feels refreshed. It feels like, like you just got out of the shower.
Mhm. And when I break contact with the surface, the helm, I get the connection with the helm back again, right?
It takes several minutes before the connection with the helm comes back.
Oh.
When the helm comes back this time, there is a sense of, like, the first time there was confusion, and this time there's a sense of like understanding from the helm, like, oh, okay, that's what we're doing.
I'm glad you know what we're doing because I don't. Care to explain?
I am conflict, is what it sends back. It kind of gives you like, basically it says the equivalent of like, I'm incompatible, and something is trying to resolve compatibility.
Oh.
So
Uh.
the DM is going to see if I have
Okay.
this map still. Hang on.
I think I have an idea of what might be happening here.
I do have this map.
It doesn't seem like the space is physically set up for this.
So the helm doesn't really talk, but the helm can send like images and impressions and things.
Uh-huh.
And it's going to send an image of this thing that I'm going to show you on this map.
The map is still fuzzy for me. I need to wait for it to load in.
Gotcha. It is a high res map that has like multiple stages on it, so it's going to take a second.
I might just refresh, honestly. Yeah, probably won't take as long if I refresh. Oh, no, it still wants to be super fuzzy.
I wonder if I might be able to help load time if I just reveal one section of the map. So I'm going to do that.
Yeah, that worked.
So the helm sends you this image, and not having the greater context makes it a little harder to understand, but I can explain because the map doesn't like to load. But in the descriptions that you've gotten from Celestia from the rest of the group, because they talked about how this place mirrors the other place, there were these pools of some sort of like liquid or some sort of like stuff that they found out were like cleansing pools, like things to kind of get all of the other planar energy, get all the energy off of you. And that's what the helm sends back. Like, oh, you're being sort of like cleansed of interference when you touch this. And at first, when it didn't know what was going on, it was confused and worried. And now that it kind of understands what's going on, it's like, oh, okay, I understand this process. Like, I'm familiar with this as a thing that needs to be done.
Okay. Okay. Um, did we ascertain if the helm has a name?
It very specifically does not, because it's part of a like collective hive mind. It doesn't.
Yeah, it's a hive mind thingy. Yeah. So I'm gonna ask, are you okay if I take you off for a moment? I think I know what I need to do.
The helm sends you back some uncertainty, and then it sends back like a it's okay if it's put somewhere proper. It doesn't want to be set off and like put on the ground or like thrown away, but there is a sense that it's getting like, oh, there's a process here. As long as you follow the process, I'll be okay.
Okay. Uh, what if I put it on the pedestal?
So you take the helmet off, you set it onto the pedestal, and as soon as the helm touches the pedestal, that image of the inner sea very quickly bleeds away into this map that is so incredibly dense that it's unreadable. But you can see the process of the change, and you can see for lack of better terms, it zoom out. And you get this impression that it's interacting with the helm while it's on the pedestal, and you can see the edges of the helm are sort of gleaming, like there's some sort of transference happening between the table and the helm.
Okay. Uh, I'm concerned. I mean, if I try and take the helm off the pedestal, it will let me, yeah?
Yeah, it does.
I put it back on.
To take the helm, slide it back on. It takes a minute or two to kind of get the connection reestablished because the helm sort of molds itself to you when it's on for a minute.
Yeah.
So it takes it a second for it to mold and kind of connect, and then you get this sense of like contentment from the helm of it was communicating, and it's not like upset with you for taking it off or taking it off of the table, but there is sort of like, oh, what do you need? Like, I was having a conversation a second ago, like, what's up?
I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure everything was okay. I didn't expect. I'll put you back. I'll put you back, and then I take it off again and put it back on the on the pedestal.
So you put it back on the pedestal, and after maybe 30 seconds of it being on the pedestal, you see the white light shift from being this sort of brilliant, like looking at the sun in the middle of the day, bright light, to changing and start to oscillate in this sort of dark purplish color. And then when it shines through the helmet, it gives you that sensation of seeing the dark purple crystal. Like, I think it's hopefully still in your stuff, but long ago you saw this place. Let's see if it's in the vignettes. Quick.
Oh, it's the city. It's the
It's the city. Yes.
I know the one you're talking about. Yes. Oh man, that was so cool. Um. No, I don't have it in my vignette. I've got the image of the walker, she who walks on the wings of those who dared to hope.
Who
And
dare
I've
to
got
fly? Yeah.
the those who dare to fly, and then I've got the crystal helm manifested as a thing.
So there is the image.
Yes. So cool. So cool. Okay. Oh man. All right. I'll let them have their conversation. I'm not even going to try and like determine the density of this map. Like this seems like just a fool's errand. And I'm going to do what I intended to do. I'm going to dunk my head in the pool.
So you go forward, you dunk your head into the pool, and you get that same sensation of like cleanliness when your head comes out. And there is this like when your head comes out of it, you can recognize how like why it feels so weird because again it's like you just stepped out of a refreshing shower but then no part of you is wet when your
Yeah.
body leaves the water you're perfectly dry and when your head does it you're like oh okay that's the weirdness because your fur takes forever to dry um,
Yeah.
and then you're like, oh, okay, that's why this feels so weird. But there is a
Yeah.
sense of, you just feel like you are physically and potentially spiritually clean after sort of dunking your head in the water.
Does that transfer to like the rest of my body, or do I have to dunk the rest of my body as well?
After you dunk your head in, you can feel it sort of slowly seeping in, and if you give it, a couple of minutes, it'll finish going over your body.
Okay. Cool. Um, I'm gonna wait politely until the table stops moving with the helm on it.
So you wait. After about 5 minutes, the symbol stop changing. The light stabilizes, and it kind of goes back into sort of looking like a stasis, right? So like you did something to it. There was a moment of transition, and then it stabilized. And then when the helm did it, it was a lot longer for it to stabilize, but it does eventually stabilize. Although the light never goes back to that white, it goes to this sort of purplish color.
Mhm.
Very similar to the second row of crystals on the wall. This is dark purple.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so once that has finished, I will like very tentatively pick up the helm again, as it kind of feels like it's like, it's like taking someone's phone off them and hanging up on the person they were talking to kind of deal. So
Mm-hmm.
like just gonna kind of like tentatively pick the helm up and then like check that the table doesn't move again, and then put the helm back on, wait for it to like reconnect with me, and then ask like, was that okay?
So it kind of pauses for a long second, and then it goes, I touched one of the shards. You can see the little so the helm can sort of change itself slightly and can kind of mold it around its head, and sometimes it kind of gives the little visor that comes down. So the little visor comes down over your eyes and it draws your attention to that ring of crystals on the wall, like that very
Uh-huh.
brilliant purple line of crystals on the wall. And it says, we were once one.
Oh man.
And when it says that, there is this sense of like gratitude towards you, like thank you very much for reconnecting us.
You have. Will you stay connected if we leave this place?
Um, it is active enough to be able to do the thing. So that is not her purpose. She was an interface designed to work with the divine and us. We were once one, but we are broken. We are shards. We are what once was all things, and you have reconnected me with another. I thank you for that. But she is trapped here. Her symbiote, her host has died. She is a remnant. She is what I feared I would become. Left alone, unable to interact, unable to reach out to the others. She has not felt another since we were separated, and I have not felt another for longer still. That's the
That's a long
longest
time.
the helm has ever said anything.
Yeah. Does it seem more like coherent to me as well? Like it seems like it's being able to communicate more directly with me than it normally does.
Yeah, like the helm sometimes will say like a couple of things or to try to give impressions and images. Even when you were trying to talk to it before you put it onto the table, it speaks in like metaphors. It gives you images of things. This wasn't. This it gave you this sort of um, a clear enough psionic message that while the voice is distinctive,
Mhm.
it felt as normal of a contact as it does speaking telepathically with anyone else in the group.
The only other time the helm was spoken to me directly in such a forthright way was in the like Hope Slayer vision.
Correct.
Um,
And it had a
where
very
it actually
brief.
physically appeared to me as well.
It had one very brief time where it did do a similar thing as well, and that was where both you and um, one of many were banished when you were on the ship.
Yes. When we touched it with Morthak's eye.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well then, I'm gonna try to leave again. I'm gonna try to walk down the tunnel.
So if you go to step towards the tunnel, the helm kind of pulls you back.
Oh. What is it?
What is beyond is not meant for a bonded pair. It is meant for you and you alone. There would be interference with the interface if I were to go with you. I will not be harmed by remaining with another, and I believe the other shard would be interested in hearing of my experiences.
Oh, of course, yes. You can catch up with your friend, and I'll go do a dangerous trial by myself. Oh, that sounds great. Um, like trying to be supportive, but clearly does not want to be like left alone.
Yeah, I totally wasn't thinking about that this moment when you were talking about having to be supportive before we started session.
I'm like, okay, you go talk to your friend, and we'll reconnect when you get back. Um, and anything you guys want to do together, that's cool, that's fine. Yeah, I put the helm back on the table. I do actually say like, be well, and uh, yeah, like kind of a temporary like farewell. Um, as it is not super comfortable. I've had this thing for quite a while now, and have essentially like promised it my devotion in like not in a religious sense, but in a like a servant sense of like I have bonded myself to aid the helm in any way I can. So putting it down feels like a minor betrayal of that. But yeah, it's asked me to do it, so
When you put it down this time, like as soon as the helm touches the tabletop, there is this hum of energy. It doesn't feel like divine power. It feels like something else that's sort of at the helm. Like as soon as you touch it to the tabletop, it immediately started vibrating with energy. So it's more like you get the impression that like it immediately started talking to the shard again.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, I will. I'll walk backwards a few steps with a little bit of regret, and then turn and continue on.
So continuing on, you can feel that same sort of the world is distorted around you, and you kind of brace for a second, like the thing is going to hit the top of your head, and you do feel like there is sort of like an ephemeral touch. Like if you get so close to touching something, but you don't quite touch it, or you can feel the maybe like just the ends of your hairs touching something, like it's very near, and there is this sense of like sharpness, like the ceiling is drawing in closer, and as you step back in, it almost feels like the sharp shards of the ceiling are molding themselves to be just outside of touching you.
Okay.
You pass forward, and then you're somewhere else. There is a motion, like a moment of sort of jarring realization that you can hear things. You can hear gulls crying. You can hear the waves crashing. You can hear people working down below. There's a whole crew gathered together. You are up top near where the helm is. Helm is in like the control a sailing ship, not as in,
Yep.
you know what I mean? But you can see that the work crew is down below, and they're cleaning the deck, they're changing the lines. And as you're sort of sitting there watching, the crew is constantly changing. It's constantly one person and then another person. They're cleaning the decks, they're not cleaning the decks. They're opening the sails, they're closing the sails. You get the feeling that this is more of like a impression of, oh, I'm on a ship and there's work being done, rather than it being like a memory of a specific instance.
Mhm.
And you find yourself sitting with your back against the the not called the gun wall, but the against the support the for the rudder, and you've got your notebook in your hand, and on the deck in front of you there's a small like crustacean that's sort of sitting on the edge of the ship, and you're taking notes, and you can look down, and in your notebook it has that same thing where it doesn't look like the exact representation, and then as you look up to the little creature that you're drawing, it changes. Now it's a crustacean, now it's a squid, now it's a bird. Again, it's
Mhm.
less of a specific memory and more of a memory of sitting in on this fervor with the day is bright and sunny. There's not a lot to do. You've set in your destination, and there's some small thing for you to observe, and you're doing the naturalist thing and drawing in your notebook and taking notes.
Mhm. And I feel like I'm physically here, right? I can feel my body. I'm
Yeah.
like, yep. I just flipped through my notebook.
So you flip through your notebook, and while there isn't anything specific that you can kind of glean from it, right? You're like, oh, I'm going to look at the dates of my notes. I'm going to look at the specifics of my notes. There is like a mixing of numbers, like you're looking at something that's constantly changing, and
Mhm.
while you can't get any specifics from it, you get the impression like, oh, this is your time on this fervor, relaxing, where there is a sense of like you've done your duty for the day, and you're not
Mhm.
technically off of work. You're still the pilot. You're still needed to be here, but you have this sort of comfortable downtime, and that
Mhm.
sense of just, I'm out in the open ocean. I'm doing the thing I'm supposed to be. I'm where I'm supposed to be. And the notebook gives you the sense of like fulfillment of like, oh, I have a little hobby. I have something I can put my heart into, and it feels good to kind of be
Mhm.
here and be doing this.
I take a moment to just enjoy the feeling.
So you're sitting there, kind of enjoying the feeling, going back and kind of haphazardly, like continuing the drawing, even though the drawing and the animal is changing. If you kind of let yourself slip into it, your hand, kind of lazily moves on its own, taking the notes and doing the thing. And as you're sort of relaxing and listening to the call of the gulls and the creak of the ship, you see someone else kind of not necessarily walk up, but not like appear like they popped out of the ground, but it almost feels like they entered the scene, like they entered from the side of the stage. It's not unusual that they just teleported here, but it's that sort of hazy memory of like, oh, now is the part that I remember this person being around.
Kind of like remembering a dream where it's like, and then you were there.
Yeah, and then you were there.
Oh, do I recognize this person?
Yes, this is Voss. Voss is the night pilot on this fervor, so they're the pilot that basically takes the other shift. Technically, they are your subordinate to a certain degree, but you had a really good work relationship with Voss, and Voss is much older than you. She is a very old goblin. She's older than she looks, and there is this sort of like she's happy in just being the night pilot. She doesn't want to take your job. She doesn't want to go and have her own ship. She likes doing what she does, and she's content where she is. And when you see her, you get the sensation of like her fitting in with the scene, right? Her fitting in with like, okay, this person is content with who they are, and that's kind of how I feel in the moment.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Voss kind of appears on scene and smiles and then looks down at you and goes, lots of time to be doing things. Yes, lots of time. She smiles, and you can see she's kind of like looking over at your notebook. She's one of those people that didn't really understand why you did the naturalist thing, but never made fun of you for it either.
Mm-hmm. I appreciated her for that.
Yeah. Voss is someone that you have had like a really comfortable work relationship with.
Yeah. I want to say like it was made even more comfortable by the fact that we only saw each other like twice a day at shift change, which meant that like we didn't like we spent enough time with each other to be comfortable and friendly, but we weren't like because we weren't like always in each other's way. Griffel definitely gets the sense that like if we had been on shift together and had to be working more closely, we probably would have had like more difficulty with one another, but it was like a perfect balance of like
yeah. And the idea of like, there is that little bit of a background appreciation for it. I hand you the ship, and I know I'm not going to get a mess when you hand it back to me the next morning.
Yeah, there's like a respect for each other's competence. Yeah.
I will say that as you're kind of sitting there and having this thought and kind of feeling that Voss is in the scene, when you think about that moment of like, oh, we're just never really working together with each other, there is a disconnect. Because while the scene doesn't feel like it is a specific memory, there's a sensation of it being the middle of the day. It's bright and sunny outside, but Voss is here.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you doing above decks? You should be getting in your rest.
So at first, she gives the sort of like comfortable old woman, like, oh, you're being silly smile. And then you see the smile turn very sharply in the corners, and her kind of sea green eyes glint gold for just a moment. And a completely different voice comes out of her and says, quick you are. Quick to notice now what you didn't notice before. You've learned and grown. There's a sensation that Voss is saying something else. Like there's kind of a background, her lips are moving, she's saying something that fits into the scene. Oh,
I see what you mean. So it's not a voice that's coming out of her physical body.
Yeah, it's a voice that comes out of like the representation of her.
Oh.
it's sort of like the scene, the scene in the movie is playing in the background, and for a moment there's like a voiceover speaking when Voss is speaking, but clearly not in her voice.
Mm-hmm. Who are you?
I'm a representation. I'm the way forward, but also the way back, if that's what you want it to be. You weren't as observant when you were the pilot on this ship. This was just comfort to you. A job that needed doing. A job you did well. But not a job you do anymore. Why aren't you here?
I I wanted to see more of the world.
You've seen more. You've fulfilled your duties above and beyond what could have been asked for you. You could have left them to their own devices and returned to your life. But you didn't. Why?
After what I've seen, who could return to this life? It's peaceful. And, well, there is a part of me that misses it. I miss Voss and all the crew.
You see that same sort of strange, glinting golden eyes, and the sort of face within the face tilts, and you can hear there's the jangling of something. Someone's moving across the deck, someone's going up the stairs to where you are, and making a lot of noise about it. A big barrel chested orc with a good chunk of goblin blood in him makes his way up, and he's sort of the type that makes his kind of feet land on the deck like he's sort of punching or kicking the ground almost. Like he wants to make it his considerable weight heard when he lands. And you recognize this person as well. This is Schlechte. This is the master at arms on the ship, and he smiles up at you, but he has kind of a cruel smile, and sort of like the guy that thinks all of his own jokes are absolutely hilarious, and also he's only got about 4 of them total.
Uh-huh.
And he smiles up at you and says, "Do be getting close, cleric. You be having offering for the chains." And he pulls out this little satchel and kind of gestures and holds it up to you. You recognize the kind of jabs in the feel. There are shrines all around the inner sea, little temples and holy places to the dark gods below the waves that you make offerings to as you pass. And Schlechte is one of those people that kind of likes to poke fun at whatever you offer. You're a cleric, right? You're supposed to be offering more.
Mm.
So he comes up and sort of shakes the bag at you. You get this sensation from the golden eyed image over Voss that this was kind of drawn to you when you said, "Oh, I miss everyone in the crew."
Yeah. Okay, maybe I don't miss everyone. Point taken. Point taken. Does it seem like I have to respond to? Is it Schlepter?
Schlechte, yeah, he's got he has like a bag that he's holding out, and you know that there's going to be like, coins that you have to put into the bag to offer to the shrine or the temple whenever you get there. So it's pretty common that the master at arms or the quartermaster, one of the two, will offer will like kind of take everybody's offering to gather it together to send up the chains to one of the shrines, or to take on like one of the smaller away ships to go and place. Like the
Mm.
entire ship, the entire crew doesn't go to make the offering. Usually it's like one or two people in the crew that go.
You send a representative party, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where like you're a cleric, so it would make sense if you went, but also you're the pilot, so there's no way it's you that's going.
Yeah. Um, I shall make my own offering from afar. Cleric things, you
So he gives a big sort of broken tooth grin. Do be cleric things. Simple man like me no be understanding. Cleric things. Sure you be offering, your offering more be important for the whole ship. Important for the whole ship. And he turns and grumbles as he walks back down away from you. You're reasonably certain that Schlecto took some small amount from the offerings before he gave it to the shrines, but not enough for it to ever really be a huge problem.
Yeah. Okay. I take a deep breath and I'm like, I do good work. I keep my peace.
So the thing fades back.
Which was always the way that I dealt with like conflict on ship.
Mm-hmm.
Was like, I'm not gonna, because like we have to live together, we have to be in very close quarters, we have to work together. Greffel was never the person to start any trouble. Like, would definitely like if it came to blows, would never like let someone hit her. Like would always like physically defend herself, but was never like the first one to throw hands either physically or verbally. So like, yeah.
So you get the sensation of like time passing, it getting to be a little bit more like evening time, and there's a sense of movement from where you were sort of relaxing in the day to someplace that you have to focus more. You have to take more of your attention. You're getting closer to shore. It's going to be more important that you pay attention. And as the sort of the impressions start to fade, or start to like coalesce, I should say, into a single scene, something that might be a memory, or it might be something that's so specific that it's sort of indistinguishable from a memory. You can tell you're getting close to land, getting close to one of the great shrines to go and make the offering. And while now it's more reasonable that Voss is on deck with you, there is that weird sense of both pilots being on deck is just strange. It's just it's not like a unheard of event, but it is unusual. So it's now sort of late afternoon, evening, and you get the sensation that the shore is coming close.
You said you were the way forward.
If that's what you wish it to be. But I'm also the way back, if that's what you wish. And you can tell that, again, Voss is saying something else than that sort of background noise of, oh, we're almost there, go ahead. And when Voss points up to off in the distance, you get the sensation that it makes sense to whatever Voss said to you, but it also makes sense with that other voice as it's drawing your attention up to an old shrine. One of the shrines to the 11 pointed iron star is this beaten up old rickety metal shack that's corroded and rusted, and it's hanging underneath this jut of rock that sticks out, this peninsula that sticks out into the ocean. And where it is, it's in the section of the Southlands where there is a constant undead presence. So there is somewhat of a reason to have a place that's very difficult to get to, but you can tell that more of it's on like the religious significant side, that this is a platform held by these iron chains kind of gripping onto the bottom of the land and hanging down over the sea. And you know that inside is one of the offering places to Saint Tython and the Leviathan, and there is a priest of the Leviathan in the temple. And now you're getting close, and that sensation, that that feeling of presence, like, oh, I'm about to be at that moment where this is where I would normally, if everything is going as according to plan and everything is comfortable, this is where I would say the words. This is where I would make the offering. This is where I would give something of myself to St. Tython and the Leviathan for the sake of the ship, and so we didn't have any problems.
No. This wasn't right. It wasn't ever right. I remember I made a choice. What is the way forward? How do I get out of this?
The way forward is desire. The temple is far from you now. You've thrown it away into the sea. But the temple remembers. It remembers that you owed your allegiance to it. It had claim over you, and that claim is broken, but still reaching. If you want to return to your days on the sea, your comfortable life, your routines and your routine villains, there is a way back. You do not have to go forward, but if you go into the light, it is a choice to be against the deep and the dark.
And the light is hope.
It is hope, but it is other things. The world has changed. I've not seen anything like this. This religion you hold, it wasn't there. But I know its kind, and the one who was redeemed can show the light of the way for others to be redeemed.
They only follow out of fear of what lurks in the deeps. It was so for me as well. We knew that anyone who didn't make the offerings would be pulled down. So we made them. But not because we gave our hearts to it. Only because we let it make us afraid. And I'm not afraid anymore. I don't want to go back to being afraid. So I want to be hopeful instead, and well, I want to go ahead. I don't know the way. I was hoping maybe this would be a little more simple.
Is it why you turned away? That you didn't want to be afraid, or did you see things? Did you learn what it is that you had served before, and you feared it more than you feared its wrath? Did you throw your symbol away out of love for the light or fear of the darkness? Were you able to see what is in the deeps and were horrified and could not continue? Or did you see what was in the deeps and you knew something must be done when the adversary will consume all?
Something must be done, or the adversary will consume all.
So,
If
go ahead.
if following the one who was redeemed is to defy the darkness, then I will defy the darkness.
So you get this sensation of the ship is approaching, like the temple is looming larger than life, that it's sort of taking up the entire sky above you, this massive hunk of rusted ancient salty metal, and this sensation of demanding an offering, demanding not a sacrifice of necessarily a person, but some part of yourself, some part of your money, your time, your energy, something of you. It's demanding that you give it or else. And it's kind of pressing down on you. And you can see that as the kind of world darkens around you, those two brilliant golden eyes are watching you, trying to see what you'll do, if you'll push through this or if you'll give in.
Um. Uh. Am I physically near the shrine? Like, or are we a ways off?
So it's that same sort of like illusion thing, the optical illusion. Like if the ship actually was where it feels and where it looks like it is, you would have crashed against the rocks long ago. But the kind of feel, the sensation that the temple is here, the time to make the offering is now. This is the moment where you need to make the sacrifice or you are doomed. Your ship is going to be pulled under, you're going to die, the darkness is going to take you. This sense of memory of what it was like to feel the power of one of these shrines, that is what's coming over Griffle right now. And you can see that the whatever it is that's standing where Voss is watching you to see how you'll react.
Okay. So I don't want to say this is easy because it's not. I think the way Griffle would be feeling is like, like there is like, despite all of the things that she's proclaimed, like there is still fear, right? There's fear of what might happen if I defy. There's fear of what might become of the crew if I defy, because I'm still not sure if this is a memory or a dream or um or like something that I don't know how this is going to affect the world or my crew, and I do fear for them, um as well as for myself. I think that um I think that when I was on this fervor, I was never one to put myself forward. I hoped for promotion, and I worked hard, and I hoped that my diligence would be noticed, and that I would be promoted. But I never asked for it, and I never asked for, I was the sort of person who would ask for extra duties. Um, I and I did them, not spectacularly, but I did them very competently and with a minimum of fuss. I never made problems for anybody. I never started fights. I never intervened in anything that wasn't my business. I was never one to put myself forward. And since then, after living like my whole life in the hierarchy of the Black Blood Guild, what I've experienced is this kind of really weird sort of like, I guess everyone's a captain now on the superstition's end. um, and these weird strangers have have opened up a whole world of new insights and perspectives. And now I've gotten used to saying something in situations where I would never have said anything. I've gotten used to being the person who's willing to stand up and be like, this sounds like a terrible idea. Or conversely, the person who's willing to step up and be like, yeah, I stick my hand through the portal. Um,
Mm-hmm. To
and
act.
yeah, I've gotten used to being the person who acts in situations where like I never would have even a year ago. And so I think the thing that is commensurate with Griffel's values right now is to storm up to that asshole Schlichter, grab the offering bag, and toss it into the sea.
So you storm over to him, and his sort of like the idea of him is there, but he's not, and you focus on him, and that sort of big hulking bulk comes in there, and he gives you one of those sort of smarmy smiles. And when you snatch the bag away from him, there is a sense of like incredible weight in the bag. Like it's going to break your arm to hold it. Like there's no way you can grip it tight enough for it to not slip through your fingers. And as you head over towards the end, towards the like the side of the ship to toss it overboard, you see little flickers of something around you, of someone else kind of walking in your shoes, sort of like what you saw from the other direction. You saw Voss was there, but there was a impression of Voss. There was the kind of collection of who Voss was to you, and then there was something else inside, and this separate identity, this separate thing. And as you're going and you're kind of slogging your way to the edge of the ship that feels like it's 1,000 steps away, you get the sensation that you're that light inside. You're that something different, and that what's around you is bigger, but in the same way smaller. Like it's less, it's taller and longer and lankier, but it's less bulky, it's less physical, it's less heavy. You get the sensation that the image that's over top of you isn't anything like you. It's very, very different than you, but it's doing the same thing you're doing. And while you're dragging this bag, you're getting it over to the edge, this image of something else is dragging itself up from the ground, that it's covered in these heavy chains, these iron things that feel like they're old and corroded and rusted, and it's dragging itself over to the side of the ship. And you get this strange, warbling, whispering voice as you go and you toss the bag over the side, and it says, "I deny you. I believe I can be redeemed." For a moment, before the image fades, before the water kind of dissipates all around you, before the colors bleed away, you get this sensation that your jaw falls away, and in its place is a mass of tentacles. That what was superimposed over top of you, it looked like the thing that you saw. Eureka. It looked like the voiceless talker. And it was the redeemed. The room fades away, and the ocean goes, the tides, the sound of the water, everything fades away, and you're in a very simple, crude place. Something that's a little stone cave with rough walls, something that hasn't been properly worked, and in front of you, there is a pool of water. When you look down, you can see that you're about thigh deep in the water, but you can't feel it. It's that same sort of water impression substance. It's not wet like water should be. You can feel that it's supposed to be there, but it's more like you're in something that's constantly washing over you and cleansing you. The impression of water, the idea of being clean, not really water itself. And in front of you, resting on the stone, looking at you with those same golden eyes, is a fox made of light. It's pretty small, not any larger than a fox that you would see in the mortal world, but it's looking at you with those bright, knowing golden eyes, and you can see bits and pieces of its fur fade from looking like fur to looking like beams of sunlight made flesh. The woman's voice comes out of the fox's mouth. You want to go forward. You can bring the light. If you'll agree to do that again with me, you can take me out of this place and be a lord of the morning.
When she says if you can agree to do that again, do I know what she's referring to?
She's referring to that, to what you just did, the taking the bag and throwing it over,
Taking
to
away an offering from the
to cast out, to like be told you must do this or else, and then to intentionally destroy not just your offering, but the entire crew's offering.
Yeah. Yes. I don't want to be afraid anymore. I want to help others not to be afraid. Yes, I will do this thing.
The fox nods at you. It is so much more comfortable to make conversation with something that can talk. Your words sound true. I believe you mean to try. The fox kind of steps down from the ledge, and it looks like it's going into the water, and then it just walks along the surface of the water to you. And you see little images float up in the fur of the fox, those images that you saw on the fire gate at the beginning of the temple, the three symbols of the domains of the temple. And then the fox looks up at you and says, "That is what you're taking with you. I've seen your world. There is little of me in it still. You must understand. I will not be a light that is everlasting. I am a flicker, a fleeting flame. Your time with me, you must make it matter. You cannot spend it at rest." It's stopped where it's looking straight up at you from the surface of the water. Like basically, like a couple inches away from you, staring straight up at you.
How long?
I do not know your world anymore. I do not know how long it can last. But I will bring my light into you so that you may bring your light into the world for as long as I can keep it alive.
A nod.
So it looks down again, and then it just hops up and into your chest, and you feel this sort of warmth spread through your body, spread through your limbs, and you see for just a second that image of a starburst appear in front of your chest, and then it fades away. It sort of breaks apart. Not necessarily like it's being destroyed, but like it's turning back into what you saw on the door. The idea of it being a formless sand, of power that is there to be used, but it had a form before, but it's now to be freely molded, to be changed into something else. And as the energy sort of flows over and through you, you sense that that divine spark in you burns brightly as the blessing of the sun is yours. So add to your character sheet a level 18 Palor's Sun Blessing.
Oh, nice.
So it will last for 5 levels.
Hell yeah. That's awesome.
So as the light fades, you look back, the entire area from the little cave that you're in all the way to where you can see the rest of the group standing, it's maybe 25, 30 feet maximum. You can
Oh,
see the rest of the group standing there.
I went on a whole ass journey.
So,
All right, so the fox is gone inside of me. Yeah,
mhm. So that's
cool.
the kind of end of the scene. And your character might be able to. It's kind of a question of whether Griffith would pick it up immediately, but if she doesn't pick it up instantly, she's going to pick it up fairly quickly. That this is one of those pools of power. This is one of those things that the Sphinx was talking about. That there are
Hmm.
these really rare little fragments of the old divinity still remaining.
Okay.
And now you have one of them.
Wait, wait. Hang on.
So,
I can't take it with me.
yeah, it's staying with you. It's in you.
Wait.
So, mechanically, what's going to happen is you gain the benefits of a level 18 Palor's Sun blessing for 5 levels. In story, what happens is the pool of power, the pool of the energy from the fox, it is now in you, and you're carrying this powerful divine spark with you.
Okay. That is cool as hell. Oh man, we have to go back to the Sphinx. Also, what the hell are those like Eureka creatures, and why was there one in here? It was that the Redeemed?
Yes,
The Redeemed was the same type of creature as Eureka,
it was.
and the Redeemed is not the same as the divine being.
Correct.
Well, the Redeemed. Wait, the Redeemed is the.
So
I'm so
what
confused.
So what you basically got was when you took that action, right? You took the action of like, hey, I am doing this thing, I'm casting it away. You got a little image of someone else who had done it before you, right?
Okay.
This was someone else that had done a very similar thing, although his wasn't a bag that he was taking to the end of the ocean and dropping in. He was pulling away chains and breaking these old corroded chains. And then where you said what you said, where you tossed it over the edge that you won't be afraid anymore, it said, I believe. I will not serve any longer. I believe. And then the kind of energy, the fox spirit said, you are like that. What you could get the sensation that that was the redeemed. And then when you talk to the fox spirit, it says it's nice to talk to somebody who can talk. The other thing that you felt, it couldn't talk to the fox spirit. So it was saying,
Oh.
hey, nice that you can speak.
Oh. So something else has been here between between now but when the temple was destroyed.
Maybe, or maybe that's the redeemed. Maybe that's what that thing was. You're not sure. Either it happened between then and now, or maybe it happened before everything.
So this temple the way so I think I'm getting confused because the one of the like epithets that you use when describing the deity that the temple is dedicated to was the redeemed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing you're not going to give me an answer if I ask, is that the same the redeemed?
It appears to be. That's what it feels like from the fox.
So
Is
this temple is dedicated to the squid face man.
who apparently believes, turned away and believed.
I always have more questions.
So That's the end of the vignette. You can walk back out.
So the temple is not to the deity. The temple isn't dedicated to the sun god. The temple's dedicated to this dude.
Or this dude is the sun god. You're not sure. From the fox, there doesn't seem.
He said, "I believe," and
He
he
did.
couldn't talk to the fox, and the fox represents the divinity that's here.
Mm-hmm.
How is that a thing?
That's a great question. That is a how religion functions has been lost for 10,000 years type of question.
Oh, I guess it could be like a Clotho situation where it's like the mantle of the redeemed. Could be the case. All right, well,